Oh, hello there, outliers. It is such a pleasure to be in space with you here today. Niyama Shang here, and thank you for joining Outliers Edge Live for another roundtable where we bring on exceptional people who are creating things in a way that allows them to be the exception. And the way that we like to look at this here is to see like how they continue to grow and continue to challenge themselves to play at higher and higher levels throughout the way while making impact and staying true to themselves. And I'm really excited to see like how all that comes together with our two esteemed, I'll use esteemed today, esteemed outliers here, Luke and Kevin. Thank you both for being here. Luke, let's give outliers a chance to get to know you. Do you mind sharing more about you and the game you're currently playing?
Yeah, I don't know about esteemed. How about just steamed? That sounds good.
We'll take it.
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity. Glad to be here. Kevin, glad to be here with you as well. I tell everybody, and I mentioned this earlier, hey, man, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho, right? And grew up in a small town. And so the games I usually like to play are pretty much any sports games, right? You grow up in a small town. If you can throw a ball in any sort of direction with any sort of accuracy, you're going to be playing sports. But really, the game of life or whatever, especially when it comes to business, for me, in the course of where I'm at in my professional career, that landscape changes. It's changed quite a bit. Right now, I'm landing into a different role that, especially in the organization I created, that role more of as an ambassador to my organization and to my mission. And so, game or however you want to call it, it's been a fun challenge, and it's been one that I think any founder that's going to go through what I call founder syndrome understands that there are pathways that lead us to different roles that are responsible for our organizations and even for ourselves, right? So, your listeners out there, you guys out there listening, you're talking to a farm kid from Idaho that's building this plane as he flies it, but trying to understand what role I'm best suited for, given the situation I'm in and the growth and the maturity of my organization. So
Luke, I appreciate that. One of the things that's striking me is how you're continuously staying on the evolution game. You're
yeah,
continuously seeing, okay, hey, we're not just repeating the same thing over and over again, but
right.
you're growing and you're evolving and you're asking the questions of, all right, in this stage here, where am I making the biggest impact? Where's the place for me to be? Uh,
Well,
uh,
you almost have to, the saying that the first group of people that make your first million aren't the same that make your next 10, right?
mm,
Um, Most of that, in my opinion, and that I've seen in my experience, is because people are fail to adapt, right? They fail to allow things to grow, and there's a bunch of measurements that come from that or steam from that thinking. Most of it is control. Some of it comes from enjoying what they've built and not letting that go or feeling separated, feeling the identity fusion that happens in something like founder syndrome or even people that, especially startup companies where they start, and people wear all sorts of hats, right?
mm.
And giving up those hats, some people, that's a hard thing. I'd say most people, that's a hard thing to do. And so the evolution of an organization is going to happen, unless you don't want it to grow. I don't know too many entrepreneurs and business owners and founders that don't want their business to grow. So if you're accepting the challenge of growing your business and that's your goal, you have to accept the challenge of role change and responsibility change, and that includes you as well, right? And most of that time is, you know avoiding becoming the bottleneck and accepting new roles and accepting new responsibilities, giving up responsibilities, and with
Yes,
that comes a
yes.
lot of hard feelings sometimes, so I think for anybody out there that's starting that, understanding that growth is going to require some changes.
Well, I'm excited to see how like we play and go through the journeys here together, Luke. It's
Yeah,
an absolute pleasure to have you here, Kevin. We'd
thank you.
love to get to know you. Do you mind sharing more about you and the game you're currently playing?
Sure. Well, I mean, the game I want to be playing
Mm,
more is
mm,
golf. I'm definitely an aspiring but middling golfer. But I Dallas, Texas is home, and I would say there are 3 games that are distracting me successfully from playing said game of golf. First is I've got the bike sitting behind me here. I've got the Dallas Ironman 10 days from today. So
Nice.
a pretty long distance triathlon that's occupying a lot of my early morning time before the kids wake up. And once they do wake up, that's the second game is being a dad to 3 girls with a rock star wife who's an attorney. So she has her own professional career. So we're both co-parenting. And then when I'm not doing either of those things, I'm running a real estate focused software company. So I see the golf course just like
It's out there.
12 minutes away. Actually, this logo is the home club. That's the club we belong to that we definitely do not spend enough time at because look, life has priorities. We've chosen those priorities for now.
Yeah. I really appreciate you being here. Like, Kevin, this is there's something that's come to me from what both of you are saying. I think this is where we'll start the conversation here. Kevin, when you brought up the bike behind you and you talked about the Ironman, it made me think that I'm like, Outliers, like we're not just like successful or like choose to go all in on like one thing. It's like when you brought up like I'm doing the Dallas Ironman, I'm like, makes sense. Like there's a level of intensity to this that makes sense. And so I'd love to like kind of explore that with you all here. I think that the way I'm going to look at it I'll probably say like either mastery or like the quest of excellence. How do you see your drive showing up in more places than just the business that you run? I'm really curious about and yeah, I'll ask one question at a time. So let me ask, how do you see your drive showing up in more places than just the business that you run? And then we'll see where we take it from there.
Well, I'd start by saying first, like Luke's intro really resonated with me because, he's talking about constantly learning, constantly pivoting. I meet a lot of people that are initially successful and then they get complacent. And like they're happy. They built a lifestyle business. They seem like they're crushing it. And then 5 years later, they're just kind of still there. And you wonder what happened. And it's because they got comfortable. And those who are most successful never seem to actually be comfortable. They're just always learning more, always challenging themselves.
Yeah. The saying, if you want something busy done, find a busy person, right? And there's a reason why that, I think, and thank you, Kevin, for that, because I 100% agree. That it's the 80-20 rule, but that 80-20 rule comes from people that always maybe it's a bad trait as well, but they're never satisfied, right? They're never satisfied with where they're at. And I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine said, you know what, you need to stop and smell the roses and enjoy life where you're at. And I'm like, that would be great. I wish I could, right? But where life is happy, where I'm settled is when I'm building and moving forward, right? My wife, I don't know, Kevin, if you feel the same way, my wife she cringes when we go on vacation because vacation to me, I can handle 3 or 4 days, but after that, dude, I have to be doing something. I have to be building something. I have to be growing I'm learning to settle down a little bit. I'm almost 50, so I'm getting older in my age, but yeah, busy people get busy stuff done. And
I like to say that my hunger often overshadows my empathy, but I'm trying to work on that. And that
hey, when you crack that, let me know, would you?
Yeah, it's been working on it for 45 years now. I'll let you know when I figure it out. When we go on vacation with our kids, I just call that traveling with children. When vacation is when you get to leave your children at home and just get to. But the only thing I've found that allows me to truly enjoy vacation, especially when the kids are there, is to take my devices and just put them in a place I can't get to them for, even if it's just for 4 hours, right? Sometimes I can do more than that, but sometimes it's just like, we're going to go do some sort of outdoor activity or something fun indoors. That doesn't matter what have you. It could be arts and crafts. It could be sports. It could be a meal. It could be rock climbing. I don't know, whatever. My girls are 8, 5, and 3. So we're a little limited on what we do. But when we do those activities, my devices go away so that I can be fully present with them and enjoy those activities. And they understand that in return for that, in return for daddy just being there with them and fully enjoying the moment, that when the device does come out and I'm looking at it, it's not because I'm looking at Instagram. It's because like there's a reason, is I'm doing something so that we can afford to do these fun things together.
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old and a soon to be 3-year-old daughter right now. So as I hear this here, I'm like, I feel you all, and I'm really curious here because what I'm curious about is the the juxtaposition of like I get both of y'all have like your drives, right? And you're like the vacation, I think, is a really wonderful example of it. And to me, there's an element of it that goes against the norm, right? Like that most people work to be able to take vacations, and I feel like it just has a different kind of connotation, or vacation feels different to each of you here. So what I'm curious about is how have you set up your life? What kinds of conversations do you have? Like how do you set people up to be able to be successful with the way that you choose to live life? There's an energy to you. There's like I feel like you're just happier getting things done and building, as Luke you were saying. So how do you like actually help like shape the world around you to be able to like leave room for that, as opposed to trying to like kind of squash you into, well, this is how it's supposed to be.
I'll start there, Kevin, if you don't mind. Like, it's interesting. It's kind of, I look at it a little bit like sports. I coached sports my whole life, right? And been in sports myself. And especially in a younger age, when you're a coach and you're coaching these young kids, there are kids that just have talent, right? There's kids that they grab a ball, and I was one of those. I just knew what to do with it, right? Where other kids take some time to learn some of those skills. So with that being said, I think there are just some skills and traits, personalities that we have, nature, nurture, wherever it comes from. I think they're inert inside us, right? And some people have those drives and they know how to access and, well, number one, recognize that they have these traits and these characteristics about them, and then they get to use it for the benefit of moving something forward. I don't picture myself, for example, I'm not like the greatest manager in the world, right? Number one, because I do better. And I know this is going to sound how it's going to sound, but I do better when I learn to manage myself, and so I expect others to do that. Some people benefit from good management, right? I think, but where I think I shine is being able to put round pegs in round holes, right? And I think that comes from when people recognize their talents and their abilities, and also equally important, recognizing their weaknesses. And so I think it's some of it can be taught, some of it can be learned over periods of time, and some people just have it and get it. And it doesn't mean that those people that don't have maybe something that Kevin and I have, or a drive that doesn't mean you can't learn it. It doesn't mean that it's the only successful trait out there. Trust me, there's a lot that I don't have that people have that are very successful, right? But they just learn how to access and use that. And I think too oftentimes people spend a lot of time and a lot of money trying to access abilities that are hard for them to learn, when they can actually access some of the talents they have and use those for good.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
it's
in heavily. Yeah, Kevin, sorry.
it's totally fine to want to be curious and to challenge yourself and to learn, but it's also there's no problem in saying that's just not a skill I have, and it's not a skill I want to have or desire to have. Like know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I hired an executive coach. This has been a long time ago now, probably 2019. It's pre-COVID, and it wasn't his original quote, but he said, "Look, you always have to as an executive want to put the right butts in the right seats." And there are some people that, like, you're gonna, to Luke's point, identify really quickly as someone that has natural talent, and you're gonna invest in that person because you want to elevate them eventually into your role as you rise, because you see similar traits in them. And so you're trying to help them grow so you can eventually delegate stuff to them that you don't want to have to do. But then there's other people that they might be very, very good at one particular thing. They're a solid individual contributor, and they have no desire to be a leader, Maybe they're very good, but they're introverted. They don't want to be in public. They don't want to get out there, right? They just don't want to do that stuff. And if you're a good executive and you're a good leader, you're gonna respect that, and you're gonna recognize their ability to produce for you, but their lack of ability to climb up in the company, and you just have to let them stay in their lane. Or if they express a desire to rise, you have to have a conversation with a lot of candor that says, here's skills you need to have to do that you do not have today.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about that too, Kevin? It's so foreign. Like, you just think people think the same way you think, right? They have the same desires. So, like, to have someone say, you know what, I just don't want to move up and I'm good right now. I'm like, that is so foreign to me, right? It's like, why are you, what, and it's not right or wrong. It's just foreign. And I think to be a good leader and a good business owner is to understand, seek to understand right before you're understood. I think to understand those people's qualities and their traits and their desires, and if, like Kevin said, if they fit in a part or position in your operation that you're looking for, great. If they don't, great. Then they need to find, or help them find something that is suited for them, or they just need to find something better for themselves, right? But it is hard to try to relate to some of those people that are just different than you.
There's one of the things that's come to me here is to, like, one, make sure you find a way to be honest with yourself. I think like you were also talking about, like know what your skills are, know what your talents are, understand where you shine and where you don't. And then I think the other part that comes to is like, and Kevin, I think you were getting at this as well. It's like, how are you positioning yourself to be like how are you putting yourself in a position where those talents actually get a chance to flourish, right? Because all three of us, we started something, so we get to do all the things, where it's like other people, like outliers, you might be out there and you're like, oh, actually, perhaps I am really great at this. How do we make sure that we get you into that position? And advocate for yourself so that you can, like someone can see, oh, this is where, like, the right butt and the right seat. I think about it as musical chairs. I'm like, how do we just make sure the music gets turned on, and when the music ends, you're in the chair that's meant for you? So I'm enjoying this. Y'all are getting me thinking here. This is just my curiosity coming in. Because I imagine you've had just a ton of different experiences. What do you mind sharing here? It'll be different for each of you, but like, the toughest leadership lesson, or maybe there's probably a distinction here: the toughest leadership lesson, or the toughest lesson you had to learn as a leader. And I think that they are different. One feels like a skill set, and one is like who you be. So I'm more interested in as a leader. But what's one of the toughest lessons you had to learn? I'm very curious about that. Either of you want to take that one on?
Sure. The first time I had to fire somebody, that was like, I don't know, it was a gut punch. Some people are like really good. They're like sociopaths, and they can just like, see ya later. It was a really hard thing for me to do. I had no training on it. No one had taught me the compliment sandwich and all that stuff. I just, and this is before there was AI, and I could go, phone an AI friend to find out how to do this. That striking that balance between being honest and giving someone the feedback that they need to improve and be a better person, while also finding the empathy to understand what situation you're putting them in when you do this, it's like a really tough balance to perfect as a leader. And unfortunately, I've gotten pretty good at the skill, because I have had to hire and fire many people. But that, I think I now have appreciation for other executives, because I know they now have to do that thing. And I now, I hold other executives very accountable for their ability to do that thing. So when I'm interviewing for other colleagues or partners or investors, it's one of the first things I ask is, when someone's not pulling their weight and you have to fire them, how have you approached it? Because it tells you a lot about a person. What are they giving them something on the way out? Are they helping them find a new job? Are they a recommendation? If it was a really toxic issue and they're letting them go for cause, are they providing them? Are they brave enough to actually provide them with the right feedback and to help them level up because they hired them in the first place? Like it's such, you learn so much about people when they're at their most vulnerable and they're at potentially their weakest moment.
I like that, and if I can jump into, that's a tough stage, I think, for sure. One that I certainly haven't perfected. I've had to fire a few people in my lifetime, which is never a fun situation. And I probably didn't handle it the greatest way, because you're right. No one gives you a manual on how to necessarily do this, right? Because each situation is so differently. But, I think, there's different stages, at least in my experience. There's just been different stages along the road that have their own weight to them, right? Their own struggles with them. My position or state of where I'm at right now, and what I've gone through recently, as in the last 3 or 4 years, has been probably for me the toughest, not probably, was the toughest stage as a leader and founder of an organization, right? And dealing with what turns out to be decentralization or defusing of identity from your organization, your role and responsibility as a founder, to now what is it, right? And that's no matter where you're at in business, in the development of your organization, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, startup company, or very mature, you enter into a phase of life, or I actually call it, you contract, kind of almost a hidden disease, and that is the founder syndrome, or I call it founder syndrome disease.
You brought it up a couple of times, Luke. So,
Yeah.
do you mind, let's define founder syndrome so we can all follow you on it.
Absolutely. So I'm actually writing a book on this because I think it's very critical, and I'll tell you this: it can ruin your life and others in a very short period of time. I started Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which is a nonprofit that builds beds for kids. And, like most, not just nonprofits, but it seems like nonprofits get started mostly from passion necessarily than providing a product, which that's passionate as well. But, for me, it meant a lot, right? So when you start, in my experience, I started a nonprofit building beds for kids initially because I found emptiness in my own soul, my own heart, dealing with the awkwardity of faith crisis, identity crisis when it comes to where am I, what's most important in life. I had kids, I had family, I was coaching, everything was great in life, but I felt a hole, just an unsatisfied, unfulfilled hole. Well, when I found that through this opportunity or this need that I saw wasn't being fulfilled, and I took and ran with it, it filled that. So founder syndrome happens when you start an organization, you start a movement, as big or as small as it is, but you start something and you put your blood, sweat, and tears in it, right? You're working hard. You start running the first stage of it, which is called the founder build, right? So you're building yourself as a founder. Then all of a sudden success comes, right? So now all of a sudden people are like, hey, Kevin, this is you're the founder of this, and this is your baby. And they start referring to the organization the same way they refer to you. And so what happens is you create this identity fusion, which is the first sign of this contraction of some sort of disease, which is not a disease, don't get me wrong, but you contract this founder syndrome, and everybody that has a foundation or starts a company will end up with this, right? And the sad thing is there's not a lot of explanation, there's not a lot of prep to it. But because what happens is when you create this fusion between your organization and your foundation and your business with your identity, it's awesome. You feel responsible for it. You feel you're the guider, and it's needed, right? Because it's not going to be moved forward unless you got someone that's pushing it, right? And that push, that leadership model infuses you with the organization. Well, as the organization grows, and like I would think everybody wants their organization to grow and flourish, that separation of this is now an organization, this isn't my startup, this isn't my baby anymore, this is actually a freaking company,
Yeah.
that's growing, it has employees and all this, and that separation can be very hurtful, emotionally, especially to a founder. And the sad reality behind that is, unless you've been through it, no one understands that infusion that happens. And the best way to describe it is, think about your kids going to college, right? Your kids leave for college. That's hard. But now think about your kids not leaving for college. They're calling someone else dad. I mean, you want to talk about rip your soul out, right? I mean, and those are real feelings. It's not ego, it's not control, because you want, the sad thing is you want the same things, right? You want this to grow and you want it to flourish and get beyond yourself, and you don't want to be the one that's responsible for it because you're the bottleneck. But when you become that, and that does happen, even though you pep talk yourself and talk to yourself and know what's right or wrong, you're still going to feel it, right? Just like having a cold, you're still going to get a runny nose, right? Even though you don't want it.
So what I'm taking from this here is, like, when you're talking about the foundation, it's the intertwinedness of like the founder and the business, and like almost like taking on the same identity. Like, you are the
identity,
business,
correct?
Yeah, right? And then there's the element of like, now you kept growing it, and now it grows beyond you. How do we go out and play it? So, and you're
Well,
right.
it happens on two fronts, right? So first, it grows to a size to where you're not completely in control of everything anymore. But when someone attacks the business for something that you didn't do, your employees did, you feel the need to defend, because when they attack the business, you feel like it's a personal attack on yourself.
Yep.
But that's not the only front you're defending. You're now having, hopefully, the point where the business is growing to a degree where now you have to trust in some other people to make decisions, and they're no longer running all of those decisions by you. And do you have the ability to let them go make those choices? That's the toughest thing to do as a founder, because, and I'm sure you've experienced this a ton, Luke, and I've experienced this, like, you won't get it right every time. You'll trust people. And look, as a founder, I wasn't perfect. I stumbled plenty. And I probably didn't have that same patience or appreciation when I delegated to someone else. I expected them to bat 1,000, and that's very unfair. And when they didn't, I was upset, and I had to, then that's why it's good to have a coach. I was like, wait a minute, like, I wasn't batting 1,000. Why should I expect someone I'm hiring to go crush it with perfection? I mean, no, I have to like let that ego go and know that, like, I'm super passionate about this company because I started it. Yeah. But I chose them because I hope that they're going to be an extension of my leadership and an extension of the company brand, and they're going to go do this. It's like, it's so hard to do that on both fronts.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you said, which in my opinion is actually a little bit of a false narrative, right? In the fact that it really isn't ego. It looks like ego. It even feels like ego to some degree, where something happens bad to the organization. As a founder, startup, when you're in control, what do? You absorb it, right? Yeah. You have to absorb it. You take the blow. Remember, you're still fused together, right? So it reflects on you. Kevin, your salesman did this. You take that personally, right? Yeah. Even though it's the organization, you take it personally as a founder, right? So you learn how to absorb those blows. Well, when you're no longer what I call invited to the meeting, right? Or you're not in the meeting anymore, right? There's a lot of disconnect, discomfort, and push out, if you will, feelings that come from that. You're already dealing with this, and then something comes and hits the company. You're like, dude, you got to absorb that, right? And then if you're not going to do it, the first reaction that we have as founders is jump in and help. We got to jump in and help, and all of these things. It really isn't an ego thing. And this is the hard thing for boards to see. This is why founders get kicked off of their own nonprofits a lot of times, right? This is why board members fire their CEOs that started the organization, because they have these CEOs. They don't understand what this founder and CEO are going through. All they see is, well, Luke's just got an ego and he just, he needs to let go and he doesn't understand. And, this is just, he's too close to the picture. They're not wrong, but what they don't understand is it's an internal fight that has nothing to do with ego. This was our identity that fused together very fast. And as an organization grows, we're asked to decentralize and defuse that. That takes some time. That takes some willingness to be honest and focus. We're not taught how to do that, right? So now we're sitting in here going all by ourselves. There's no one in this organization that's feeling this because they can't. They didn't found it. So you're sitting there in this misery, pep talking yourself, saying it's okay. Gosh, Luke, this is just my ego. That chill out, go on. This is what you want. These are all great words to talk to yourself, but it's the feeling you can't escape. It's like having the runny nose. It's still going to be there. So instead of fighting that, realizing that, I have a chapter in my book called Naming the Monster. Once you name it, it's kind of like when you have these symptoms of sickness, how many times you go to the doctor and when he's like,
once you know what it is, once you know what is actually going on, you can actually change it a bit and you're like, correct. Oh, I can move with it. Yeah.
When you don't know, when he doesn't have an answer, you're like, oh, that was a waste of freaking money. I mean, you're almost upset, right? But when they do give you an answer and say, well, yeah, Luke, you have this, it's such a relief. Now you've named it, you can see it, you can identify it. And us founders, you don't have, there's no real reason or textbook of why and then how do you deal with these feelings, right? And then helping other people, which it's not their responsibility to help you go through your emotions, right? But it does help them to understand, you don't know what we're going through, right? I'm dealing with it, right? I appreciate your patience as I mature through this decentralization, of this defusing of the organization. The company doesn't have feelings, so it grows and it's just fine. But you haven't been able to grow emotionally to catch up with that diffusion, and that's difficult. That's hard.
Kevin, I love what's being said here, Luke. Kevin, there's a question that's been coming in my mind as he's been talking, but I've also seen a lot of nods and everything for you. So before I ask you that question, I just want to see is there anything that you want to say or add on to what Luke was saying from your own experience?
When I look back on what my decision matrix was when we had 12 employees versus the 120 we have today.
Wow.
It's so different, right? Not only am I not in every meeting, I'm only aware of everything that's going on when it goes through 2 layers of escalation to get to me. So if something gets to me, it's either really good or it's really bad. Right? Because our head of customer success, our head of revenue, our head of marketing, they are handling stuff that is potentially problematic or potentially opportunistic, but doesn't really need my involvement because I trust them to handle it. Yeah. And then if it gets to me and it's potentially really bad, okay, now I need to involve the co-founder and CEO and our general counsel. And it's and no one teaches you okay, what decisions are worth your time and what decisions trust other people. And that decision matrix changes a lot as you grow. Every decision is important when you start the business and you're by yourself. And every decision is still important when you hire your first 3 people because you care a lot and because you want them to care as much as you do. And then eventually this thing snowballs and you hope that the people you've hired 1 layer underneath you care as much as you do. And they are your defense. They're your flank. They're preventing a lot of those problems from even coming your way. Yeah. We're now a global business, right? I mean, I spent some time in Singapore. I spent some time in the UK and in Germany. And so, yes, I can't manage everything. by myself. I need to trust other people, and that art of letting go is really hard to do.
This is like I'm grateful for the two of you, because as you're stating this, I'm like I've been a part of a number of large organizations where I can see this happening, and you're giving me a bit of some points to be like, oh, this is what to look for, and when it happens, like what I feel is like it actually, I'm like, oh, I'm looking forward to joining this club. I understand that it's really painful to have to go through, but it also seems like it's part of the process. It is part of this thing. Yeah, Kevin.
And oh, by the way,
Yeah.
everything we've learned over the last 25 years could now be turned on its head because Claude Code and Claude Cowork has come out, and people can rebuild what we've spent the last 8 years building in 8 days. It won't be as good, but it could confuse client bases and be kind of good enough. And so now, like, the competitive universe has totally changed the game with AI. Luckily, Luke is in a bit of a different type of business that requires very, very focused belief in manual labor and quality analog products. So there may be a little more defended. But like, I think that across the board, AI has completely shifted this paradigm, and it really just circles us back to the beginning of like, what are you looking for in a team and leader? And that's just your ability to pivot and learn and be open-minded and coachable, because who knows what's going to come at us tomorrow, despite what moat we think we've built in our work lives and our personal lives.
I think that's great. We're about to wrap up here. Luke, is there anything else you want to put in here? Anything either of you would like to say? Let's say this. We'll wrap up it with 3 questions, right? We'll start off with this. The first question is going to be what I call an outsight. So this is a message that the two of you have that you'd like for any outlier to like hear, right? This is like for you telling it to them. So start off with the outside. We'll do one question at a time. Is there anything that, if you can talk to any outlier right now that's listening to this here, what's one thing that you would love for them to get across?
Well, I keynote speak about tiny moments, right? And answering those tiny moments. They're feats of inspiration that we get once in a while, and we dismiss them far too easily, right? Even within our own organization, too busy, don't have time, doesn't relate, someone else is doing it. All these excuses that we develop, when it actually just comes down to action, right? We all want to change for the good, right? We all want to do make a difference and be successful in all these changes. Why doesn't it happen? Why do we sit there in this dream world, if you will, or of wanting to change and knowing we need to, but it doesn't happen? And I've learned, because the desire to act to make those changes is not big enough, and doesn't overcome the desire to change. So we spend a lot of time working on our desires to change and want to, and read all these self-help books and all this stuff. And that's great. You need that. Don't get me wrong. But ask yourself, how much time and effort and energy are you putting towards your desire to act on these changes? That's really where the rubber meets the road. I started Sleep in Heavenly Peace not because I knew kids were sleeping on the floor. I mean, ultimately, that's what drove it. But this started because some dad wanted his kids to appreciate the joys of service and giving back, as well as appreciate the things they had, like a bed. We don't need another Xbox, right? I wanted to teach him that. So I get up off the couch, I say, which is my act in a tiny moment, because my desire to want to change my kids was bigger than just wishing they would change, and me myself as well. I was going through some really rough times. I wanted to change. Man, I've been wanting to change for a couple of years, pep talking myself, just figuring out what's going on, why, and blah, blah, blah. Finally, it got to the point that I'm like, okay, I have to do something. I have to act, right? And the more I focused in on that acting and following that recipe, if you will, that's where real change happens.
I feel that. Thank you, Luke. And Kevin, how about you? What's an outside that you have for outliers?
I mean, it's not all that different than Luke's. There's this great book that Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz fame is written, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. There's a lot of insights in that book, but one of them is that the time that you spend anticipating the tough thing that you're going to do, it is wasted time. Like it's like it's so uncomfortable. You spend so much time in that discomfort of like worrying about that hard conversation you're about to have. You'd be better off just having it, because you're always worried about what's going to happen during that conversation. And usually it's much ado about nothing. And you feel so much better after you've had said conversation, or you've taken said action, or you've done the thing. And even if your worst fears come to fruition, nothing you had done in preparation would have helped you avoid that potential outcome. So it's better to just rip the Band-Aid and do it, because 9 times out of 10, the outcome isn't nearly as bad as you were expecting. In fact, sometimes the opposite happens and you get some good outcomes from it. And so just recognizing and respecting that discomfort and then moving on very quickly and just taking action, that is what separates a type A and a successful person from an unsuccessful person.
I'm loving this here. So like Outliers, like we've gotten a lot of outsights throughout this thing. Kevin, I'd love to know, like, how can Outliers go deeper down the journey with you?
So the best place to communicate with me is always on LinkedIn. It's the only social media platform I use. Find me there. I'd love to continue the conversation. Doesn't matter what the topic is. I just love people who are excited to engage.
I love it. I love it. And Luke?
Same. If you want to learn, I come in two fronts, right? I'm the advocate for sleep and heavenly peace, or the advocate for child bedlessness, really. And it's a problem that no one knows about, right? So on a side note from business, if you're looking for, something to give back, or you want to know about a need that's happening in your own town that you have no idea is going on right underneath your nose, go to shpbeds.org, learn about child bedlessness and how you can help. And on the other side, on the business side, right, you want to get a hold of me about anything, whether it's sleep and heavenly peace, maybe you're a founder, maybe you're a nonprofit that's struggling and needs some advice or some help. I'm glad to. I have a business called Humans Helping Humans, where I do some nonprofit consulting and business coaching, and get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, SHP Luke or Luke Mickelson, either one. I'm on all the platforms, sad to say, but I got to be on all the platforms. Happy to help. I'm like Kevin, right? When you see success, like this is our battery charger. I don't see this as work to me. This kind of stuff. I can't believe we've been on here for an hour. It feels great because I love helping people, and I love when I know that there's something that I can offer, right? Because people have helped me, and so love to have anybody reach out.
Oh, thank you. Well, the last question we have here, we'll keep this one short so we can be done and you can take off. But it's one of my most important questions here. Putting Outliers to the side, like, we came together as strangers beforehand, and now we've had this experience here. And I like to leave every experience. It should be a life-changing experience. We should be able to grow as a result of that here. And so I have an ask of you all here. Would you mind sharing an insight that you're taking away from this conversation? How has this conversation been helpful for you? And like, my thing is, you've been honest, you've been transparent throughout here. If it hasn't been, just say that, But if there's something that you're taking out of this thing, I would love to hear, and then we'll use that. We'll wrap up our conversation from there. Luke, why don't we come to you? We'll go, and then we'll end with Kevin. We'll be done for today.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, Kevin. I love, it's interesting, and I already liked you on LinkedIn. I think you saw that. But what's interesting is when you have this common bond with people that think like you. I think that's given everywhere. But when it comes to like entrepreneurship, right, or it comes to business ownership, there's a bond that happens there because I think there's an understanding of what the freak we went through to get there, right? And there's an instant appreciation. It's kind of like seeing someone that's in shape. You can appreciate what they've been through because right? You know what that took. And I always love rubbing shoulders with people like Kevin and yourself, who know what it's been like and is willing to share some of those insights with people that want to learn. And all you listeners out there, I'm glad you're here because I wish I was more wanting to learn and didn't think I knew everything 25 years ago. I'd be farther along. So you're on the right path. You're doing what you should be, finding inspiration as well as education from people that have been through it, know how to do it, and have suffered through the stuff that you will suffer through. It's gonna happen, right? You just know now maybe some tools that you can work through. So.
I appreciate you, Luke. Thank you. And Kevin, any insights from you?
I spend so much time surrounded and inundated with devices and digital stuff, because I'm software business. It's made me so happy multiple times during this session to just hear the hum of a drill. And just remember that, like, because like at the end of the day, my clients are real estate clients. They're building buildings, and so just to get that reminder, even though it's building beds, like our world, what brings us together is not devices. It's not digital. Even though we're doing this on a digital platform, and it's amazing that we're able to do this because of technology, ultimately what brings us together is like face-to-face interaction in an analog way.
Well, I'm taking that. That actually hits me really hard here. Luke, Kevin, I want to thank you for the time that you spent here today. Thanks for the insights that you brought to the table and experiences that you shared. Outliers, this conversation continues, and it continues through action as well. So like, let's make something happen of it. Until the next time we all talk, be you